I am a late 30s average office worker. I've lived my life diligently, and a few years ago, I got married and now live with my beautiful little princess, forming a family of 3. Having worked hard, I've earned the title of manager and hold a good reputation within the company. This might be due to my inability to outright refuse requests, a trait of my personality. Being tall and having a likable face might have also worked in my favor with the ladies. At times, I've been angry with myself for being too naive and unable to refuse requests. However, it's not in my nature to speak ill of others. Thus, I ended up fulfilling various favors without looking out for my own interests until I met a great mentor who helped develop my capabilities. About a year ago, our team embarked on a major project. We worked tirelessly, staying late and working over the weekends. Without a break, the project had a deadline, and we needed to deliver the results by then. It was not something we could postpone, especially since it required direct reports to the executives, leaving no room for mediocrity. I was appointed as the leader of this crucial project. The responsibility weighed heavily on me, and despite only being able to motivate my team members, I ended up resolving many issues myself. Ultimately, the project we submitted was selected, bringing significant profits to the company. Having had mediocre promotions and evaluations until then, seeing my efforts finally shine was immensely gratifying. The higher-ups must have acknowledged this achievement as they arranged a grand dinner for us at an expensive venue, paid for with a corporate card. My team members and I were thrilled, indulging in the lavish food voraciously. Naturally, the dinner included alcohol, and as we drank one glass after another, we began to feel the effects. Just as we were about to wrap up and move to a second location, an executive arrived and settled the bill with the corporate card. The executive is a woman. From what I've heard, she's one of the founding members of the company. Despite being in her late 50s, she is tall and remarkably slender. Her face, reminiscent of a cat's, retains its beauty even as she ages. Not only is she striking in appearance, but her capabilities are also exceptional. It's said that she comes from a well-off family and had the privilege of studying abroad, playing a key role in establishing the company. She is known for her meticulousness in work, to the extent that not even a needle could slip through. Rumor has it that even someone as formidable as her has experienced her share of hardships. At the height of her career, her husband was involved in an accident and has been bedridden in a hospital for years. There was a time when people in the company criticized her for focusing on work, while her husband was in such a condition. I had always perceived her as a strict and unyielding figure. Thus, meeting her towards the end of the dinner was quite surprising. I was so nervous that I hardly remember what I said. As my team members were heading to the next venue, I thought it best to excuse myself. I handed her the corporate card she had brought and sent them off, leaving just the two of us. Strangely, despite the occasion being a celebration, I felt uneasy about the high cost of the meal and even found the situation a bit intimidating. So I told her, "I'll be heading home now. Thank you for coming all the way here late at night." She waved her hand dismissively and said, "I came to encourage you all, no worries. Anyway, where do you live?" It turned out I lived in the same direction as her. Caught off guard, she quickly said, "It's on my way. I can just get off first. Let's share a ride." And with that, She opened the door and got into the car. Unsure of what to do, but feeling it would be rude to refuse, I ended up sitting in the passenger seat next to the driver. Glancing through the rearview mirror, it seemed that the executive, perhaps due to exhaustion, had fallen asleep during the short 15-minute ride home. I too relaxed a bit during the journey, and before I knew it, we had arrived at her house. When the driver tried to wake her, she wouldn't budge, resulting in me having to help her out. It turned out she had already had a drink before coming to our dinner payment. Given the situation and the fact that I was a man, I ended up carrying her inside her house. The driver, who also seemed to fulfill some secretarial duties, opened the door for us, and I laid her down in her bedroom. The driver only opened the door and didn't follow us inside. After covering her with a blanket, I was about to leave when she grabbed my arm. She was lying down just as I had left her, but now, with her eyes open, holding onto me. Then she asked if I would like to have another drink with her. Startled, I stuttered, "Ah, you're awake? How could I drink in the house of a woman whose husband is?" Trailing off before I could finish, she chuckled, sat up at the edge of the bed and said, "My husband, he's been bedridden for over 10 years until recently, when he moved into a nursing home. There's no hope of him getting up, and now I'm truly alone." I was caught off guard, not only by the news of her husband's condition, but also by her invitation to drink. Before I could respond, she went to the kitchen to prepare some drinks. In the ensuing awkward atmosphere, we began to sip our drinks in silence. She served an incredibly expensive wine, and it was my first time realizing wine could taste so exquisite. I quickly emptied my glass, prompting her to ask if I was in a hurry to get home. Caught off guard, I blurted out, "No, not at all. It's just that I've never tasted such delicious wine before. I'm sorry if I seemed upset." To my surprise, the previously icy executive suddenly burst into laughter, tears even welling up in her eyes. After laughing for a while, she suddenly moved closer to me and asked, "Did you say you were married? That you had a baby recently?" As she placed her hand on my chest. Confused by the situation, I took a step back and simply replied, "Yes, that's correct." She then frowned and stared at me intensely. Honestly, at that moment, she didn't seem to be someone 15 years my senior. She appeared much younger, better maintained than women in their 30s and 40s, my peers. She was naturally beautiful, and her age added a sense of allure. Nervously swallowing, she pressed her lips against mine. She kissed me passionately, as if to devour my lips, pushing me back to the edge of the bed. It might sound like an excuse, but I spent the night in a drunken haze. Morning came, and as I was hastily putting on my clothes, I saw her reading documents while sipping coffee. She was wearing a thin silk robe, which only added to her beauty. She no longer seemed the cold, unapproachable figure, but rather more charming as a woman. That's probably why I found myself staring at her until she noticed me. Seeing me just staring blankly, she smiled warmly. She then offered me some snacks and even gave me an expensive suit to change into. I couldn't help but wonder what had happened in just a day, yet I didn't feel bad about it, especially considering I had been feeling drained from endless household chores and child care. It's a terrible thought, but her allure was heightened in comparison to my wife, who only wears tracksuits every day. Since then, the executive and I have occasionally met in private. More often than not, it was she who took the initiative, leaving me flustered on numerous occasions. Whenever we found ourselves alone in the company elevator, she would playfully tap my behind or subtly grasp my hand, finding my surprised reactions amusing and provoking even more teasing behavior. One day, I found her husband at her house. As she approached me, I gave her a look, to which she responded, "It's okay. You can relax. Have you grown tired of me lately?" Vigorously shaking my head in response. She then said, "Can we talk comfortably when we're alone? Call me by my name, will you?" in a voice as soft as a baby's. Eventually, I found myself enjoying these situations. When work exhausted me and I felt belittled by my wife's nagging at home, being called out by her actually became a source of happiness. Initially, my wife was suspicious, but when I explained I was with the executive, how could I refuse when she keeps calling me? Everyone else is dying to get noticed by her. She didn't say much. Without explicitly denying it, my wife never seemed to imagine the executive was a woman. Now, if I don't go out on weekends, my wife is the one to ask, "Has the executive not been calling you lately?" Of course, at first, she wasn't pleased with how often I had to go out, even for work. However, as I started meeting with the executive more frequently and got promoted faster than others, it seemed to satisfy her. To my wife, my promotion seemed more important than me diligently doing household chores or parenting. Thanks to the promotion, my salary and bonuses significantly increased. With this heightened income, I found myself treating my wife better, albeit with a strange sense of guilt. After the initial promotion, I even thought about taking the executive on a trip to spend more time together. So I sent my wife, our child, and her family on a vacation, despite my inability to attend due to work commitments. Everyone was pleased when I offered to cover the travel expenses. These actions may not truly reflect my capabilities, but it did feel gratifying to be able to strut a bit in front of my in-laws. I have now come to accept my relationship with the executive to some extent, though not exactly enjoy it. I've started exercising, something I previously avoided, and have been diligently taking care of my skin. At times, it felt as if I had to present myself as a more satisfactory product to the executive, which brought on moments of realization about my situation. After going through that phase, my perspective shifted to, this is also part of social life. Given the circumstances, I find myself wanting to make the best use of this relationship with the executive until she no longer needs me. Just a year ago, I considered myself a kind and caring person to those around me. However, as my position and opportunities for personal gain increased, I've become more pragmatic. While I acknowledge that these were my choices, and I must deal with them, there's an indescribable unease and guilt that sometimes arises within me.